It's a question echoing across Hollywood. Just how low can Disney sink? While it might sound like a playful phrase from a Bahamas cruise, it's actually the sentiment surrounding Disney's live-action Snow White remake starring Rachel Zegler. What was once a highly anticipated reimagining of a beloved classic has spiraled into a PR catastrophe, marked by plummeting box office projections, ongoing controversy, and now a moment at the Oscars that many believe was a public humiliation. For Zegler, the backlash against the film has been brewing for months, but the real controversy isn't just about Snow White itself. It's about Zegler's own words. In a widely circulated interview, she openly criticized the original 1937 animated classic, calling the prince a stalker and dismissing the love story as outdated and irrelevant. Her remarks ignited a firestorm, with fans accusing her of disrespecting the legacy of one of Disney's most cherished films. Fast forward to the 2024 Oscars, and it seems Disney may have subtly distanced itself from Zegler in a way that many see as an intentional snub. The internet is buzzing with theories, and the situation has only added fuel to the fire of Snow White's troubled journey. With Disney's confidence in the film seemingly shaken, the question remains, is this just another bump in the road? Or the beginning of a full-blown disaster? It seems Disney may have taken a subtle but pointed jab at Rachel Zegler during the 2024 Oscars. As Zegler walked onto the stage alongside Gal Gadot, a seemingly innocent musical cue caught everyone's attention. The song playing in the background, "Someday My Prince Will Come," the very tune that directly contradicts everything Zegler has said about Snow White. If that sounds intentional, you're not alone in thinking so. The moment was subtle but undeniably powerful. As Zegler and Gadot stepped onto the Oscar stage, a noticeable tension filled the air. Observers were quick to point out that Gadot did not acknowledge Zegler. Not a glance, not a smile, nothing. Instead, she positioned herself front and center, while Zegler was left lingering in the background. It was an awkward dynamic, but the real sting came from the music. Disney's choice to play "Someday My Prince Will Come" wasn't just ironic, it was a direct callback to the original Snow White, the very film Zegler had dismissed as outdated. To make matters worse, this song isn't even featured in the new Snow White soundtrack, which replaces it with a modernized, supposedly more empowering track titled "Waiting on a Wish." If this wasn't an intentional move by Disney, it was one of the most unfortunate coincidences in Hollywood history. But given how disastrous the Snow White rollout has been, many believe this was Disney's subtle way of rebuking Zegler for her past comments. Disney's handling of Snow White reflects a broader shift in Hollywood's relationship with its audience. In recent years, studios have embraced modern reinterpretations of beloved classics, often infusing them with contemporary social and political themes. While some of these efforts have resonated, others have alienated core audiences who feel the remakes disrespect the originals. Zegler's remarks about Snow White are a prime example of how actors and studios sometimes miscalculate audience sentiment. Rather than celebrating the legacy of the 1937 classic, she dismissed it entirely, calling the prince a stalker and labeling the love story outdated. Unsurprisingly, these comments didn't sit well with fans, fueling the growing divide between Hollywood elites and general audiences. Disney, once the undisputed king of mass market appeal, now finds itself in a precarious position, struggling to balance progressive storytelling with the expectations of its traditional fan base. And if the studio is indeed turning its back on Zegler, the reason is clear: Snow White is shaping up to be a massive financial disaster. Initial projections estimated a respectable $60–70 million opening. But as backlash intensifies, those numbers are looking increasingly optimistic. If this trend continues, Snow White may go down as one of Disney's biggest misfires in recent history. Initial projections for Disney's live-action Snow White were already underwhelming, but recent reports indicate that the film's estimated opening weekend has now dropped to a disastrous $48–50 million range. For context, The Marvels, one of Marvel Studios' worst-performing films, opened to just $46 million. If Snow White continues on this downward trajectory, it could go down as one of Disney's biggest live-action failures. The backlash against Snow White has been relentless. Fans aren't just rejecting Rachel Zegler's interpretation of the character, they're actively boycotting the film. Social media is flooded with criticism, memes, and widespread calls to skip the movie entirely. The controversy surrounding Zegler's past comments, combined with Disney's ongoing struggle to regain its box office dominance, has created a perfect storm of bad press. All signs suggest that Disney is already in damage control mode. The studio has been noticeably silent about the film's promotional campaign, offering far less marketing than one would expect for a major tentpole release. The Oscars moment, whether intentional or not, only fuels speculation that Disney is preparing to cut its losses and move on from the project as quickly as possible. It's not just Disney that seems to be distancing itself. Whispers of tension between Zegler and her Snow White co-star, Gal Gadot, have been circulating for months. Their Oscars appearance only added fuel to the fire, with body language experts and fans alike noting that Gadot barely acknowledged Zegler on stage. Could this be another sign that industry insiders are beginning to see Zegler as a liability rather than a rising star? With the film's release still months away, Disney is running out of time to salvage Snow White. But at this point, it's unclear whether any amount of damage control can turn things around. The backlash is already deeply entrenched, and audiences have proven time and again that they're willing to reject films they feel push the wrong. Meanwhile, Zegler finds herself in a precarious position. Once hailed as Hollywood's next big thing, she's now at the center of one of the industry's biggest controversies in recent years. If Snow White flops as expected, the consequences for her career could be severe. Hollywood may have a short memory, but a high-profile failure, especially one as controversial as this, can be difficult to recover from. As Disney's Snow White remake inches closer to release, one big question looms. Will the studio continue to stand by Rachel Zegler, or has it already begun to pivot away from her? If the Oscars moment was any indication, the decision may have already been made. The Snow White debacle is a textbook example of what happens when Hollywood tries to rewrite the classics. From Zegler's controversial remarks to Disney's lukewarm support, this film has been riddled with problems from the start. Now, with box office expectations plummeting and public sentiment overwhelmingly negative, the future of Snow White looks bleak. Whether Disney intended to embarrass Zegler at the Oscars or not, one thing is clear: this film is in serious trouble, and the studio may already be searching for an exit strategy. The conversation surrounding Snow White has been dominated by controversy and concern. Its box office potential, marketing strategy, and casting choices have all raised red flags, with many industry analysts already predicting that this could be one of Disney's biggest financial disasters in recent years. From the beginning, the numbers have been alarming. Industry experts are struggling to understand how a Disney film, traditionally a box office powerhouse, could be tracking so poorly. Even casual moviegoers wandering into theaters should generate more revenue than current projections suggest. If Snow White fails to break $50 million in its domestic opening, it may be a clear sign that audiences have completely turned their backs on Disney's current direction. The real question isn't just about Snow White. It's about Disney itself. Has the company alienated its core audience to the point of no return? If so, that could explain why it appears to be quietly distancing itself from Zegler, and perhaps even mocking her at a high-profile event like the Oscars. The performance of this film could be more than just a financial failure. It could signal a major shift in audience perception. For decades, Disney was synonymous with family-friendly entertainment and mass-market appeal. But recent controversies, creative missteps, and unpopular